Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Rachel and this is the weekly garden tour. This is where I go over everything that's been happening in the garden, like the good and the bad, how I'm handling problems, and just kind of my thought process as I go through the year and how things change along the way, because we all know that plans never go according to how you're hoping. So hopefully if you're a new gardener, this will be really helpful for you to kind of see a real garden as opposed to the very beautiful, very well kept, but unattainable gardens that you might see online a lot. And I hope that you stick with me through the summer and also through the winter, because I do show the garden every single week. There are also things that I show not on a weekly basis just because they're changing very slowly, and that is our rotating segment at the end. And this week we are going to be checking in on how all my composting is doing. Specifically, we're going to check in on worm bins. So this is the garden. I started out with this in-ground space over here, and over the last couple of years have been expanding out into this raised bed area over here. I have a hard time not buying the plants that I want, and so I have to keep building spaces to put them. Alright, we're gonna go in the same order as always so that you don't get disoriented. Right here at the front is this arched trellis. I have scarlet runner beans planted on it, and last week I was telling you guys how I was noticing a lot of flowers dropping without setting fruit. One dropped on camera dramatically. But I have noticed down here, we've got a couple of beans set. So that is a good sign. That means that nothing is particularly wrong with the plant. We've got all the conditions we need for fruit to set. I did read online that sometimes the lowest first flowers to come on the plant will drop all their flowers, and that's not entirely unusual. I've got more baby beans up here and another teeny tiny little beans up here. So I'm not super pressed about it. I wish that all of these were setting fruit, but there they go. But yeah, this is my first year growing these, and we'll take what we can get. Down on this first row by the sidewalk, it is kind of a mess right now. Like up here you can't even tell where the lawn ends and the garden begins, because the Bermuda grass is so vicious. I do have a few things planted in here. This is a turmeric. Its leaves are coming on nice and big. I don't know why this one leaf is turning so aggressively yellow, but seeing as the other leaves look fine, I'm not yet worried about it. Also buried in the weeds here are some strawberry plants. These are cuttings from my original strawberry, singular. I started with one strawberry over in the berry patch, which you'll see. And these are cuttings from the runners of that. And I'm hoping that they can do the same thing over here that they did in the berry patch, where they kind of got really dense and made it hard for grass to grow. This is another turmeric right here. This one has this purple vein down the leaf. And so a viewer sent me some sprouted turmeric because mine was having a lot of trouble getting started, and they sent me not just regular turmeric but also some black turmeric. And me being the lazy gardener I am, I did not record where I planted the black turmeric. I just figured I'll know when I pull it up, but I'm wondering if this streak might be indicative of that. You can see I am desperately trying to use grass clippings to mulch down most of this row, just because it is very sparse right now. There's a few strawberries over here and a couple more plants dotted along this way, but for the most part it was cardboard and straw, and you can see how long that kept the Bermuda grass back. So every time I mow the lawn, I'm trying to dump as much grass clippings on here as possible, because they can be pretty densely matted together. If you put a really good layer, they will at least outcompete the grass for a little bit. This one here is skullcap, I believe, and I have not yet done anything with this. This is my first year growing it, so I'm kind of watching it to just get acquainted with the plant. And this is all the way at the end of the row now. I have marshmallow and valerian right here. And hopefully these both will get pretty large and start providing some shade and making it less habitable for the grass here. Now that we're at the end, we're going to turn around and look at the tomato row. I don't normally go backwards here, but we've got almost all indeterminate tomatoes on this row, and only a few determinates, which as you can see are bushing out quite aggressively because I'm not pruning them, and also I was not prepared to support them in this way. I really like this upright trellis for indeterminate varieties because of how you can prune them, but because I don't want to prune my determinants too much, they are just kind of laying on the ground. And so next time I grow those, I will know what I'm getting myself into. But for now, we're just going to have to deal with them on the ground. Now, I do have a ton of green tomatoes in here. I think we're still like a week away from ripening. I did get a teeny tiny ripe tomato the other day, but it seems to be like a fluke. It is way ahead of everything else that is out here. And I've also been continuing to protect blossoms so that I can save seeds from these plants pretty early. I've got quite a few tomatoes that are going to be ripening up in this first batch that are protected blossoms, so I'm pretty excited about that. After they have been protected and set fruit, I go ahead and twisty tie them so that I know which fruits were for sure protected during pollination. Right here in the middle, I've got one of my blue cocoa pole beans, and I just now noticed I've got a crap ton of beans on it. I think last week we had just started seeing the first flowers, and suddenly it is harvest time. Beans go so fast. I like to pick them at this stage where I've seen this plant enough to know that this is a full-size bean. Like, it's not going to get any bigger except for the beans inside it growing. And if I want to eat them fresh, this is the perfect time to pick it because everything inside is tender. The pod is tender. That string down the side hasn't had really any chance to develop. So it's really, really tender, really delicious. You can pick them as tiny as you want. Like, you can pick these and they'll be tender and awesome. It's just that you're kind of missing out on a little potential. And as we go down the plant, we should find older beans. So like here, this one has gotten a little bigger, but also the beans inside have started developing. And so this bean still gonna be okay to eat fresh, but already starting to get a little tough. And that is not what I want for fresh eating. With these beans, what I normally do is I pick as many beans fresh as I can at the start of the season, and then inevitably I get burnt out on that because there will be so many, and at that point I just let them keep growing, and I can harvest the mature dried beans out of the pods of these and save those as dried beans for use throughout the year, which I've done for 2 years now, and I can say they are really good as dried beans. Again, this variety is blue cocoa. Down here in the mess of determinate tomatoes, on this side it is Borghese tomatoes, which are, I bought them without thinking too hard because I saw that they are really good for sun drying, and that's a thing that I have struggled to do with my tomatoes, is get them sun dried and also have that like tang that sun dried tomatoes have. So I've been workshopping that, and if I feel like I figured it out, I will teach you guys. But basically, these tomatoes give me hope that I might be able to make some really good sun-dried tomatoes this year. Last week, I think we also looked at this particular basil. It was about to flower, and as you can see, I have not yet pulled from it, so it is already starting to flower. I definitely need to go ahead and start clipping back this basil, make the first little batch of pesto for the year. Letting your basil flower kind of changes the flavor of it, so you really want to try and keep cutting off the tops as much as you can. And with basil, that is a wonderful way to harvest it because, as you can see, it splits a lot down the stem, And so every time you cut off the top, it's like a hydra. It's doubling. It's growing 2 new heads in its place. So yeah, always harvest the top nicest bits off your basil. And I'm going to be making some pesto with this, and I'll probably be able to pull from some of these purple ones as well. These tomatoes here look the closest to being ripe. You can see they're starting to get just a tiny bit of that color on them. I bet these will actually be ripe before I see you again next week. Plants I don't talk about as much because they're all on this other side of the tomatoes, and I'm always walking on that side, but I've got some other types of basil here. So on that side is pretty much all like pesto type basil, and over here is more tea type basil. This is I think this is a Thai basil. Thai basil and cinnamon basil look so similar, so I can't really tell until I've put it in my mouth. But this one's probably Thai basil. And this one here is lemon basil. You can see the difference in the flowering. This one has flowered so much faster than the other one. And that's actually okay. This one I use for tea. I throw the flowers in the tea and the leaves, and it's all perfectly fine. My favorite thing to do is to take any of these tea type basils and put them in with hibiscus, and then finish it off with lemon juice and honey. And if you want more specific instructions, I do have a video on my channel going through that process of how to make basil tea. Okay, so looking at this second row here, this row is mostly peppers with a bunch of other stuff in between. Right here at the front, we've got a couple of eggplants, and these are, again, some of the ones that were really sick looking when I put them in, and have been growing really nicely ever since they got put into normal soil. So I'm very happy about that. They are a little behind where they would normally be this time of year, but it looks like they might catch up and actually still produce fruit for me, which is way more than I thought I was going to get when they had little curled up cupped leaves. The zinnias are really starting to take off. This one plant now has, instead of one flower, multiple flowers and branches. And if you didn't know, these zinnias, every year they just keep splitting and blooming and blooming and blooming, like all year for me. I'm starting to see fruits on some of these sweet peppers in here. I think all of these seeds were saved from a Lisa pepper, and they may or may not have been really well protected. Like what I'm seeing here, this is kind of the Lisa shape, but definitely not the right color. This one is kind of the right color, but definitely not the right shape. And if it turns out that they are crossed by accident, then there's a very good chance that they are not sweet anymore, because I do grow hot peppers very nearby, and if they did cross with a hot pepper, they would definitely be hot because that's a dominant gene. So I guess we'll have to wait and find out. My path zinnias are really coming along. They suited themselves, and I decided to let them be, and they're already out here trying to flower. Over here is the hot pepper section. As a reminder, these are the only peppers I have that were not affected by that crappy soil that probably had herbicide in it. And so these are all looking way healthier and way lusher than the other peppers. I've been trying to isolate some blooms and get some seeds from these plants as well. I think it's much harder with peppers than tomatoes, and I can't give you a good reason why that is. I just have a lot more trouble with it. I think you've got to kind of baby the blossoms a little bit more and hand pollinate them. But we are seeing a little bit of fruit set on these guys, and before long I will have more hot peppers than I know what to do with. Actually, that's not true. I have lots of plans for these hot peppers. I'm growing things like cayenne, which I will dry and make into a spice, and Tabasco, which I will make Tabasco sauce out of. I've got some peppadew peppers in here that I'm gonna pickle and make jars of peppadew peppers. And I've got peppers for chili spice blends, so that's guajillo, ancho, and chile de arbol. We've got some peppers in here. I think I've got jalapeno style peppers in here that you can just like kind of chop up and add to whatever you're cooking, things like that. And everything that doesn't get used kind of gets frozen or dried. and I put off using it till later. Sometimes I will make a chili oil with it. No hot pepper goes to waste. Last week we dug up a single potato plant. All of these that are in here are just accidents. They must have been potatoes that I left from when I had potatoes planted here previously. And there's actually a lot of them. These ones are just a little younger than that one that I pulled. They haven't started dying back yet. So again, I'm going to just keep leaving them until they start looking a little sick and dead, and that is the time that you know that your potatoes are ready. Right here in the potatoes are my onions. These have gone to seed, and you can see these seed pods are currently maturing. I specifically left this onion in the ground to make me seeds, and I may or may not use them. As I've mentioned, I'm trying to move into perennial onions this year, but we'll see how that goes. All right, so we're going to move on to this third row here, right here next to the trellises. Quick check-in. This is a mallow plant. I got it at the native plant sale, and I really thought that I'd broken the big stem when I planted it, but I kind of propped it up and it seems to have healed itself. So I'm pretty pleased with that. And it is right next to my noodle bean trellis, which has been just kind of going. We're all the way at the top of the trellis now, and I am starting to see these beginnings of flowers everywhere. So we'll have noodle beans before long. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say noodle bean, just imagine like the pole beans we saw earlier, but like 1.5 feet long, just hanging from this trellis. They are also purple. This is technically a Chinese red noodle bean, but they look purple to me. And just imagine them all hanging here like noodles. You eat them just like any other bean, but just because they're so long and wobbly, we call them noodle beans. This second trellis has cucumbers on it. Although my cucumbers have survived the onslaught of whatever was eating them down to the stems, as soon as they sprouted, we now have what I think are flea beetles all over them. And I'm hoping that that doesn't set them back too much either, because now that I've got them sprouted, I would really like to, hi Draco, I would really like to get some cucumbers. And I'm glad I didn't thin them any sooner, because I'm going to need all the chances I can get to get a good cucumber plant up here. Back past the trellises, this is my reserve pepper plant area. When I saw that all my sweet peppers looked really sick, I went ahead and bought some plants from the store just so I would be sure to have peppers this year. And so that's what all of these are. They are pretty big, healthy plants. We've got a few different types. This one is a gypsy sweet pepper. What else do we have here? A jalapeno pepper. I think there's a Marconi in here. And we are going to be getting fruit from these sooner than the other plants, but I am glad that the other ones are definitely making at least some kind of fruit for me. These Brussels sprouts that are here, I have really toyed with taking them out, but I haven't yet because they continue to look kind of okay. They are trying to start making sprouts already, which in the heat of June is probably not going to work out very well for them. But I'm kind of lazy and they're not yet causing problems yet, so I've just been leaving them. Same with these lettuces here. These are going to flower already, making their cute little lettuce flowers, and they will be seeds before long. And then this final back section is my corn. This is all a popcorn variety because I am so obsessed with popcorn. They're getting pretty tall now. The thing that my friend likes to say, she grew up in Indiana, and she told me the saying was knee high by 4th of July for the corn, and I kind of think we've already beaten that. This is my knee right here, and some of this is like thigh high, you know? This is pretty good. Alright, back here on the fourth row, the back of the fourth row, I just saw this cluster of leaf-footed bugs on this poppy seed pod. And I had no idea that they liked poppy seed pods so much. I wonder, I'll have to look up if this is like a legit trap crop for them or something. But they are having a good time over here. I also have my blueberry bush back here. This one I thought it was dead. I neglected it so hard. And then it appeared to be not dead. So I was like, well, I guess I'll put you in the ground so that I stop having to take care of you and give you the best chance to live. It has been making berries, but they are just kind of small this year. Maybe next year they will be bigger. But I don't know. We'll see. It's here now. And again, hopefully it will get big and start shading some of this grass back. The rest of this fourth row, I'm going to be honest, is mainly weeds. We do have a few things of interest in here though. I have some more of my pepper plants. These ones are ones that I started after I noticed my first ones were looking bad. So these are younger by about 2 months and theoretically did not touch that contaminated soil. I've also got more zinnias back here. There should be some basils here and there. And I've got a ton of self-seeded cosmos just right in here. Absolutely beautiful flowers. Absolutely directly in my way, but that's okay. We can go around. And what else do I have back here? I've got a ginger here. I have these kind of all over the place, but with the garden getting overgrown, I tend to forget about them because they're just plugged in between everything, and it's kind of hard to see them right now. But also in this area I've planted more tomatoes. Again, the contaminated ones were looking sick, so I planted more seeds, and now that the contaminated ones have recovered, I have a ton of extra plants. So even though I have no trellising over here, I've planted these guys anyway because I have them and I hate to have them go to waste, and I do technically have this space available for them. What will happen, and you'll see as the summer goes on, is they will vine out a lot similarly to the ones that you saw over by the trellis, and that will mean that fruit will end up kind of flopped, if not on the ground, then very close to the ground. And the vines will get all tangled up and some of the leaves will get sick, and it won't be the best tomato experience, but I think I will get some tomatoes from it, and that's valuable. Alright, let's check in on this side of the garden. First of all, my pergola right here that me and my dad built together. Its job is going to be to hold up my grapevines, which are coming along. Oh, you are starting to hold on over here. I'm going to try and train them up these pillars, and then obviously eventually up over here, so I'll have some really lovely shade. And this pergola was built with climbing up to the top in mind, to be able to harvest the grapes that are all the way up there, because that is 9 feet in the air. The new hardy kiwi vines that I planted are still sticks. It's hard to tell if they are alive or dead. To be fair, it hasn't rained very much in the past couple of weeks. I would actually say it maybe hasn't rained at all in the last couple of weeks. So there's a good chance that my neglect has caused these to die. Hopefully not. And I guess I will get another chance next time that they are on sale. I think they are completely out of them at the store right now. I could also order some online, but the whole reason I got these in the first place was because I just saw them randomly in the store, and I was like, oh, that seems like a really cool thing to have. So I don't know. I'll keep checking in on this guy and see what happens. You can tell I've tried really hard to mulch this area, but even with a layer of cardboard underneath all these wood chips, the grass cannot be stopped. All I can do is hope to allow selective ground cover back in here. I've been trying so hard to selectively pull out grass and leave things that seem like they'll be flatter, like whatever this is right here. Seems to vine out along the ground really nice, like ground cover. I do like my wild violets, so I've been leaving those. And I did plant a couple of ground cover plants intentionally, but they are not taking off nearly as fast as everything else. So it is a constant battle. I mean, look at that over there. It's as if I never mulched at all. Oh, my poor container. Guess who hasn't had time to do anything about it? But this is like the best proof I can show you that this soil was bad, because I had beautiful cucumber seedlings come up here, and they have just slowly yellowed and withered and died. And even though they're technically like still alive, right, they're living a half-life. It's a cursed life. So yeah, this whole thing needs to be dumped out and redone. This raised bed right here was the first raised bed I ever put in 2 years ago. In it I've got some stevia. This is getting to be about where I would harvest some to go ahead and make some extract. I've got parsley that has gone to seed out here. I might save the seeds, but I usually don't, because just buying a clump of parsley plants at the store, the grocery store specifically, is so cheap, and you can split them up and have like 4 or 5 different plants from that one purchase. They are above my sage right now, which is looking gorgeous. I've also got some feverfew right here. This is gonna look like a chamomile flower as it comes in. We've also got some oregano going to seed out here, some thyme, looking kind of brown and crispy at this point, but I think the second it rains it'll really green up. And you can see some of this stuff near the center is looking really nice as well. Right here at the base of my weather station, these are the 3 creeping thyme plants that I planted on purpose. I haven't checked in on them in a while on these videos, but they are creeping. I have to pull stuff out from them all the time to give them just the best chance of really taking off and doing well as a ground cover. But I would really like to have a lot of this in here. It's real short, real cute. I think that would be nice. This second raised bed right here, the tiered one, I am finally getting calendula flowers right here. And these I can harvest to do stuff with. I probably will dry them inside. My chives have fully gone to seed, and there's a lot of stuff dying back here. But this is a perennial, so it'll keep on coming back, and even now I can find nice green chives to use when I want to. Carrots have gone to seed pretty fully. If we check in on the one that is farthest along, it looks like we're starting to get little brown dots of mature seeds in there, but not quite fully ready, I would say. And everything else, these flowers, they're covered in pollinators. Look at that. So many. Absolutely beautiful flowers. I also have been starting to see these beetles around. These are, I think, a Japanese June bug type thing. I think they are invasive, but they come around here every year, and mostly they're in the berry patch. I am surprised to see them out here in the carrots. Here my Greek oregano has fully gone to flower. It is also kind of covered in pollinators. If you hold still long enough, you can just see things flying everywhere. And it's making really nice flowers for me. And right underneath it is my lemon thyme, also flowering. This next raised bed is where I've got all my determinate potatoes. These are more of those purple potatoes, and you can see the plants are looking like they're kind of dying back. So it would be about time for me to start exploratory digging and seeing where things are at. I also in here have an evening primrose and Jerusalem artichoke, because I think it would be nice to have a perennial potato that I don't have to plant every year. And I was talking to somebody recently who asked me why having perennials and not planting stuff every year was so important to me. And The answer really is just that a garden this size is a lot of work, especially in between making videos and also having a real job that makes me most of my money. And every little bit that I can take off my plate that I don't have to do is going to be really nice. No matter what I do, I am still going to have to spend the time harvesting and preserving every year, and that is a massive undertaking all on its own, even without everything else. And so I am just trying to take as much work away from myself as I possibly can. This raised bed here also has some calendula in it. Oh, there's a little bee in there. This is a different type of calendula than the other one that we saw. I think the other one is like the typical resina calendula, and this one, I cannot remember the variety off the top of my head. In this raised bed, we also have more turmeric. This is another marshmallow, yet another marshmallow that is stunted. It has not gotten any bigger. More, oh, we've got a spider friend in our oregano. This is the first, can you see it right there, that X? This is the first little baby writing spider in the garden. I've also got some onions down here along the side. These are the only ones I haven't pulled, and they seem to have been growing a lot slower than the onions that were in the ground, I guess. But yeah, that's starting to feel kind of soft. I think these will flop very soon, and they will be smaller because the soil also had a couple of bags of that contaminated stuff in it, unfortunately, but fortunately it was mixed with a bunch of other compost and stuff, so not nearly as bad as like the pot where it just had the bad soil. We've got, yarrow. This is what this is. This is yarrow and asparagus right here, and we'll give all of this a big layer of compost this fall, and hopefully everything starts looking a lot better next year. And then there's the sweet potato bed. It is looking really nice. It is already escaping onto my oregano over here. This one in particular is actually an ube. You can see that in the shape of its stems. It's this twisty kind of square, and the leaves also are just a little different than sweet potato leaves. So I think, because like I said, I'm trying to have as little work as possible, I'm probably just going to let this go and get crazy wild and just see what happens. I can always decide not to do that again next year if it ends up being really bad. But for right now, I think it's gorgeous, and I would love to see it take over and potentially choke out some more of this grass. That would be excellent. This final raised bed here has more potatoes in it. These ones are an indeterminate variety, so they are taking a little bit longer. They also seem to have some of that damage from the herbicide. That's that kind of twisted, puckered leaf right there, as opposed to a more normal looking leaf like that. It seems to be somewhat minimal damage. Like, these plants are still growing, and I think I will still get potatoes from them. But they're not as big as they could be. And again, we'll have to amend the soil and hope for better luck next year. These are also still flowering. So pretty. And you might wonder, is it safe to eat those or anything that I know that has been contaminated by this herbicide? It is a guess that is this herbicide, but at this point I have enough evidence that I'm very sure of my guess. And I just want to point out that this herbicide is usually used with grass crops, so like straw, hay, corn specifically. It is made to kill nightshades, which is your tomatoes and peppers and potatoes, and let your grass crops survive. So if you're buying commercially grown corn, chances are very good that it has this herbicide on it already, and that tells me that it's at least as safe to consume as any other pesticide. You know, the jury's still out on what the long-term effects of that are, but seeing as I'm not doing that every year, I think I would still like to eat these potatoes and get whatever harvest I can from them and just try to avoid this catastrophe next year. I definitely need to come out here later and harvest some of these blueberries. There's so many right now, not to mention all the blackberries and the raspberries. In between my blueberries, I have St. John's wort right here. I put it here because it can tolerate slightly more acidic soil, and that's what the black blueberries, tend to like. And it's been growing pretty well. I haven't used it very much. I am definitely looking at getting to know this plant as well. Blackberries are in peak harvest season right now. There are so many good ones. And raspberries also kind of still continuously in peak harvest season. You can see all these berries under here, and all of this, almost every tip of plant you see is going to be even more raspberries in a few weeks. Absolutely insane amount of raspberries. Underneath here I do have an in-ground worm bin, and this is the first one that we are going to check on as part of our checking on how the worms are doing. Let's see if we can get in here. So in here I do have a lot of pill bugs, and I need to go get a little hand shovel to kind of dig and look for worms. I'll be right back. Alright, so digging through that bin, I've actually found something pretty concerning. This right here, which might look like a worm, if I go ahead and kind of separate it out, look at the tip of that. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Look at the head of that. This is a hammerhead worm. This is an invasive predator of earthworms. So I am going to have to take this inside and throw some salt on it and like fully kill it right away. See if I can find more in there. If all my earthworms die to these guys, I'm going to be so upset. I have found these in my garden before, and you do have to be careful killing them because they can, like, if you cut them up, they will just multiply. But I've seen these in my garden before and seem to not have too much trouble with still having lots of earthworms. But yeah, that's concerning to find in my literal worm bucket. So the good news is that my worms aren't necessarily like trapped in a bucket with these guys. The point of these in-ground worm bins is they do have holes in the sides. And so I put all my scraps in the bucket, the worms come into the bucket and eat it and then go out and hopefully poop their compost somewhere else and spread that compost for me. So hopefully they are doing just as good a job avoiding these guys out there as they have been normally. I have plenty of earthworms in my garden. Every time I go to dig, I find them. It doesn't really seem to be an issue, but I will be keeping an eye on that, specifically in these buckets. Now, I did pull out a slice to look at because it is hard to get you guys as a camera into this bucket to look at, but you can see pill bugs, which are decomposers. That's totally normal. I saw some spiders in there. There's some of these guys, whatever they are, these like little like short centipede looking things. There are a bunch of mites in there. There's this little guy. Lots of decomposers in here. Haven't found any worms, but it is starting to heat up for the day, and so I think they generally leave the bucket during that time, but I can see little worm poops all in here, so I know that they are coming through. Alright, this is my second in-ground worm bin out here. I had put this in as I was putting this raised bed up as kind of like a test to see how it would do in the raised beds. It ended up being a very unlucky raised bed to choose because, like I mentioned, of all the soil contamination. But we're gonna check in and see what's going on. Anyway, I did find a lot of worms in this raised bed area as I was kind of filling it. So hopefully we can find something. You can see I threw a little bit of coffee filter in here recently. Lots of pill bugs. Lots and lots of pill bugs. That looks like some rotted peaches. Not being gone through super fast like I might expect if there were worms in here. Oh, there is a worm down there though. Let's see if I can get him up here for you guys. Right there. There's that buddy. So we do have worms. That's a really good sign, especially here in the middle of the day. And I could probably add more stuff to this. I do want it to be a little bit more full than it is, but I'm kind of just taking my time and trying not to overwhelm my poor little worms with all the food. There's a lot of worm droppings here down on the lower edges of the bucket. So if I was checking on this, like, I don't know, at 8 o'clock at night right before the sun sets, I bet I would see a lot more worms. But so far, no big warning signs as far as this amateur vermicomposter is concerned. And here are those dead hammerhead worms. All I did was put them on this path stone and pour salt all over them, and they just kind of like melt / dry up. It's really weird. But yeah, they will be fully dead and no longer able to split or wreak havoc with the worms. So this is my standard compost pile. Recently I've mostly been pouring chicken manure on it from my neighbors. You can see it's pretty well mixed with wood shavings, which I think is really nice. It balances the carbon and nitrogen just like right off the bat with no work from me. And when I do pull large plants out of the garden, I will throw them over here. But this pile is getting a lot less use these days. I do still keep it around to put my bokashi into, but with the worm bins, I'm hoping to have less and less bokashi, because having a pile like this, right? You put all, you first of all bring all your stuff to the pile, and then you wait for it to decompose, and some nutrients are lost in that process, and then you have to take it back to the garden to spread properly. And having these in-ground worm bins circumvents that entire process. So the plan I'm kind of shifting towards now is, if the in-ground worm bins are working out, I'm going to make more of them, and the plan is to separate out my scraps from inside a little bit more. So currently I've been throwing it all into bokashi buckets, letting that ferment, and then putting it outside in this pile. I think I will switch to mostly worm scraps in the worm bins, and then everything that can't really be a worm scrap, like my meat and my oils and like all the weird stuff that bokashi can handle, I will bokashi that and then still throw it in this pile, because that is still like the most efficient way to take care of that food waste, in my opinion. Because otherwise I would be having to dig a hole for the bokashi every time, which is exhausting, especially when it's a 5-gallon bucket full of stuff. But I will, if I'm separating out stuff into the worm bins, probably have way less bokashi, have to empty it less often, and that's a like smaller pile of stuff at the end for me to have to spread back onto the garden at a later date. Alright, so let's go see how the actual bokashi buckets are doing. So I've got my 2-bucket system, which is basically fill one bucket while the other bucket is fermenting, and once they're both full, empty the older bucket and rinse it out and start filling it again. I very recently switched over buckets, so this older one is still relatively fresh on the top. You can see I don't really have a lot of bacterial growth of any kind, and we are kind of, by the time this is ready, this should have kind of a white fuzz all over the top of it. Doesn't smell too bad though. That is a pretty good sign. If your bokashi starts smelling like absolutely rancid, like more than just kind of slightly decaying fruits and vegetables, then you know that something's probably wrong. Also, just a quick check-in on those onions I pulled last week. I've got garlic pulled now as well. I'm not sure, actually, I think about it, I don't think you guys were there for that. Let me back up and show you some of this garlic. Some of these heads are actually really quite large, and I'm very happy with my timing on pulling them this year. Last year I waited too long and a lot of the heads split, but like these look really nice this year. They're really good size. This variety, for anyone who's interested, is Dixon Softneck. It is from the Experimental Farm Network, And every year I take my best looking cloves and I replant those, and only the best looking ones. So year over year I'm getting better looking garlic that is better and better suited to my specific garden. That's not to say I don't get tiny heads. There's definitely a few of those in here, and I think that just comes down to kind of the nutrients that are available in that specific spot, and potentially some competition, because I definitely plant my garlic in between everything else. But yeah, these are out here drying, and because these are a soft neck, I will be able to braid them like I have in the past, which always looks super pretty. Yeah, that is my garlic. Oh, look at this big one. So good. This is a year's worth of garlic right here. And as far as my onions go, you can see the tops are starting to dry out, but there's still plenty of green. You want to wait until there's absolutely no green left whatsoever, and that's when you know that your onions have finished curing, and you can go ahead and chop the stems off, because what you're waiting for is all these inner leaves that are still green to dry up and seal off the neck right here, so that the bulb is protected from the outside as you're storing it. And hanging from the corner of this window is the coriander seed, the cilantro seed that we pulled last week as well. It is all dry and nice, and I could take the seeds off of that and take them inside basically whenever. Alright, lastly, let's take a look at the indoor worm bin. This is the first worm bin that I had set up with my friend Danica, and right now the fruit fly problem that I had is gone. I think having this little bit of cardboard on the top has really helped with that. Just gotta be careful not to get any worms dumped out. Alright, it is pretty dark in here, so I'm going to try and dig through here and see if I can show you guys some of what is going on. I think this bin is probably about ready to be harvested. Let's see. There's a worm right there. There's another one right there. Yeah, I think this bin is about ready to be harvested. You can see it is mostly worm castings at this point. And I probably won't record myself doing that because I have like literally no idea what I'm doing. But once I do know more about what I'm doing in the future, I will try to talk you guys through that. But there are plenty of other videos out there by creators who know a lot more than me if you need that information sooner. And look at that little guy. I have been intentionally not feeding these guys because I know that they need to be harvested, but I keep getting busy, and so it has been a little while since they've been fed, and they do still have some of this roughage in here, this cardboard and other like stalks of things that didn't get eaten up very quickly that I put in here. So they're definitely not without food, but I do need to harvest soon because they are getting to be mostly worm castings. Alright guys, that is all from me today. If you are new, you want to catch up on other garden tours, I will leave a playlist of this year's garden tours right here for you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening!